Hey, kids, want to see a dead body? There you go. There's a dead body. Welcome back, everybody. It's your pal Orange Chat here with Ambassador. Soon to be coming in will be Novus Renaissance. And wherever Kate, Nerd with a Cigar, is, I think she'll be here.
Kate, if you can hear me,
ahead,
move
Kate.
your ass, woman.
Yep.
Move it. Snap to, lady.
Guessing that she wants to be kicked off the panel, I guess. I don't know. I'm joking, obviously. I would never kick her off the panel. But, yeah, we're getting feet of snow out here, folks, up in the Adirondacks. So if my signal shits the bed, I do apologize. Plus, we are having 4 panelists on, plus a shared screen, which will only diminish it further. So I do apologize ahead of schedule for any weak signal that we will get. We are getting some serious shit up here. It's called the mountains. Yeah. So, yeah.
We're going to be getting some later this week as well down here in Indiana.
You know, good luck to y'all.
Yeah.
Me? I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Not even Cackling Kamala?
As I said, wouldn't wish this shit on anybody, but then again, she could probably afford a freaking person to come in and plow her shit. But,
she probably does, because Doug probably doesn't do it for her anymore.
Probably, but anyway.
Sorry.
Getting off of that, we're going to be discussing Rachel Zegler's Snow White box office projections. We're going to be discussing Disney getting sued for discrimination in a class action lawsuit. USAID, or USAID, whatever the fuck it's called, is targeting gamers, folks. They targeted gamers for misinformation, disinformation. And a simple Google search, folks, will or shows that all these people talking about, Rings of Power has been renewed for a 3rd season. Officially renewed. A simple Google search will show that they are literally so desperate for headlines that they will make shit up. So, yeah, we are going to get into all that. But before we do, if you want to support my channel, you want to like my channel, just like, comment, subscribe, share, all that jazz. I'm trying to get the 2,000 subs. We're into 1609, so if I can kind of get up to, I don't know, fuck it. If I can get up to 1,800 by the end of the year, 2,000 is just, I guess, unrealistic because I don't have tits or a pretty face. I mean, this is an ugly mug. I do freaking admit it. But you know what? Because I don't got boobs, I guess I'm not destined for 2,000 subs. But you know what? Hey, I live with the hand that's dealt me. I'm not going to freaking bitch because I'm not a woman. I would rather be a guy anyway. Being a woman, I'm already cranky enough. I don't need a freaking period to make me even more cranky.
I don't think I could handle a female. I don't think I could handle that. I don't think many people could. That would be
Novus Renaissance. How are you, sir?
Greeting Orange and greeting all. Greeting Ambassador. The supernatural fantasy world of Door is well, and we are eager to engage in this delightful conversation.
Oh, by the way, for the people listening in, now that Novus is here, he is a person who speaks in the 3rd person sometimes, and he also does the royal we. He is also a, he's delusional. No, just kidding. I'm just fucking with you.
Visions of grand delusion. Just like General Chang in Star Trek 6.
Yeah.
Well, if I would rather have somebody who has delusions of grandeur than just being delusional. You know, like you, Orange.
Well, we are going to use that delusion as a good segue.
Yeah.
Compared to Rachel Zegler,
So-
we're all sane.
Yeah. Speaking of,
Um,
Rachel Zegler killed Snow White, folks. She killed it. She killed it dead. It's dead. It's going to fail because the box office projections are looking fucking grim. What do you want to say, Ambassador? I'm hearing you saying something.
well, I was just going to say that later we'll be discussing something that we won't quite dread as much as Rachel Zegler killing Snow White.
Yes, also Judge Dredd, we are also going to be discussing as well. If Kate would get her spangly ass in here.
I am the law.
No, I am the law. I am
Exactly.
the law.
Guys, seriously, if you're going to do it, you got to do it right. I am the law. That's how you do it.
Bravo.
Yeah, anyway.
Right.
So, yeah, Rachel Zegler is a pain in the ass. She killed her fucking any chance of success for the box office of Snow White. We are going to share a screen if I can get this fucking thing up. There we go. So, oh shit, I accidentally. Oh well. Yeah. So yeah, folks, I'm gonna jump over to the thingy. Sorry if I do not read your comments immediately. I'm reading, so yeah, I apologize. So yes, this is from That Park Place. Disney's Snow White box office projections look grim as audience apathy sets in. Rachel Zegler film shaping up to be a major Disney disaster, which we have been reporting on since its inception of her opening her mouth 2 years ago, folks. Rachel Zegler has literally made herself absolutely unlikable. And Gal Gadot didn't do any favors either. But let's get into this article from That Park Place. Shout out to M. Montanaro. Good to see you, man. Or shout out to you, man. And yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Kill the fire. Kill it. Kill it.
yeah. Anyway. Ugh.
Go Evil Queen.
Yes. With Disney's live-action Snow White remake set to hit theaters on March 21st, set to rest in pieces in theaters on March 21st, early box office projections are painting a bleak picture. The industry tracker Quorum reports that the film is on track for a 63 to 70 million domestic opening weekend. Folks, that's bad. With other sources projecting 65 million. While this would mark the highest domestic opening of Rachel Zegler's career, surpassing her $44.6 million debut in Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds. I said it right, thank God. And Snakes. I usually say songbirds like burger, but whoops. Anyway, that's a cry from the heights of Disney's previous blockbusters. Numbers look even worse when compared to other Disney live-action remakes. Little Mermaid opened to 95.6 domestically over 3 days and was still considered a financial disappointment. It bombed. Disney's Lion King 2019 debuted with 191.77 million. And Beauty of the Beast, and the Beast, not of the Beast, but and the Beast 2017 174.7 million. Both surpassing 1 billion globally. By contrast, the Snow White box office projections place it closer to Maleficent 2014, which opened at 69.4 million and managed to reach 758.5 million worldwide, though its sequel failed to turn a profit. The reason for Snow White's dire outlook goes beyond box office comparisons. The film has suffered catastrophic marketing missteps and backlash that has been building for nearly 2 years. Both the movie's trailers have been obliterated, and I believe the most recent one is also ratioed, each surpassing 1 million dislikes. The third one that they released, folks, the final trailer, I don't think it's reached 1 million dislikes so far, but it is ratioed. I know that much. The teaser trailer, released mid-2024, currently holds 1.5 million dislikes to just 101,478 likes. The official trailer, which debuted in December, has 1,015,508 dislikes and only 40,000 530 likes. A Christmas Day sneak peek feature Zegler's new song, Waiting on a Wish, fared no better, earning 45,000 dislikes to just 4,800 likes. Ouch. So yeah, this is where the apathy comes in, folks. The apathy surrounding the film has worsened in its controversial star. Rachel Zegler has alienated audiences with her string of inflammatory statements and erratic behavior. Zegler has openly mocked the original 1937 film, calling it outdated and misogynistic. She further inflamed tensions by using Snow White's trailer release to promote her political views, including advocating for Palestine. She also made disparaging remarks about Donald Trump and his supporters following the 2024 U.S. election. May they never know peace, as she said. And then she issued a fake apology, by the way, folks. Sparking widespread backlash and a forced public apology, which is fake, by the way. If you look at the grammar between the statement she initially gave to the election as well as the apology, you will notice the grammar is very two different people-ish. Adding to the film's woes is its massive production costs, reportedly ballooning to over $300 million due to reshoots. This decision to overhaul its depiction of the Seven Dwarves, replacing them with a multiracial group of crackheads, came after heavy criticism from Game of Thrones star Peter Dinklage, who stated depicting the dwarves as actual dwarves would somehow be offensive. Yes, because dwarves only live in caves, according to Peter Dinklage.
Well, he's a dwarf, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. He doesn't live in a cave. He lives in a mansion, I believe, which kind of doesn't make sense. I mean, wouldn't a normal house be a mansion for somebody like him?
Wait, he's a Targaryen. That's funny.
Yeah, I know, right? Despite initially dismissing the leaked photos as fake, Disney later admitted the images reflected on the original concept, which they abandoned following the backlash in favor of 7 CGI characters who have become the laughingstock of Hollywood. Rachel Zegler's box office track record also offers little hope for Snow White. Her recent film, Y2K, bombed at the box office with a pitiful $4.2 million gross. The combination of her unpopularity and lack of enthusiasm for the projects has led to a marketing nightmare. Folks, Paddington 3, she was supposed to be in that. And they're like, yeah, you got shit going on, so we're gonna go with somebody else. Even a series of virtual parody videos mocking the movie by setting savage audience comments to music outperformed the film's
I have seen those.
Yeah. Now,
Go on.
at present, it's all right. At present, Snow White looks poised to suffer not only from poor box office numbers, but also from the worst possible outcome, audience apathy. While other Disney flops like The Little Mermaid at least garnered attention through controversy, Snow White seems to be losing the battle for relevance entirely. With a sky-high budget and a sinking public interest, Disney may be facing one of its most catastrophic box office disasters in years. I'm guessing a $500 million in losses, folks. What is your Snow White box office prediction? Well, that is it. I mean, folks, she hasn't had a successful movie in her entire career. People will say that Ballad or BSS, the Hunger Games BSS, is a box office success. Well, yes, it is. It did break even. It didn't break even enough to make profit or a substantial profit. So yeah, folks, Rachel Zegler, she's made herself unlikable. She has made herself folks, it's gotten so bad. To give you guys an idea, my hometown theater most likely is not even going to show Snow White because people just don't care. Not to mention Disney would probably make my hometown theater show it for like 3 fucking weeks, and they don't want to do that because they would be literally losing money. So yeah, it's like, no, we're gonna take something else. I mean, that they don't care. Panel, Ambassador, thoughts?
Well, we have covered this topic, and it does not surprise me in the least that the projections for this movie are looking rather well, bleak, beyond bleak. Let me present an analogy. I imagine people would rather spend a weekend in Mordor rather than watch this movie. And we know how grim Mordor is.
It's
a
quite
land
lovely
of
this time of year.
That is true. Ever since Sauron got kicked out, I imagine Mordor is maybe just a little bit more hospitable. But even when Sauron was alive, I imagine people would rather spend a weekend there than going to see Snow White starring Rachel Zegler. You know, I want to mention something. Back in the 80s and into the 90s, there were a lot of movies that had become cult classics. Movies that of my generation in Orange, and I'm not sure of your age, Novus, or anything. I'm not going to assume that we would consider cult classics that we love. Granted, they were not box officely successful. The Last Starfighter, Krull, to name just a couple. And yet, to this day, these are movies that people love. We watch them, we discuss them, we share them with our families, we share them with our kids and our grandkids, our nieces and our nephews, and so on. And yet, I guarantee you, in 5 years' time, maybe 10, no one will remember, much less care about, the live-action remake of Snow White. However, the original.
You're generous.
I tried to be a little bit jovially generous here. I would imagine in another 5 to 10 years, people will still watch, share, and enjoy the original Snow White, the movie that literally launched Walt Disney Animation Studios, not to mention Walt Disney, the company in general. Rachel Zegler should be ashamed of herself, although I don't know if she actually knows any shame. The people who greenlit this production should be ashamed. I don't know if they, too, know any shame. And the fact that the meme campaign around this movie is more successful and more well-liked than the movie itself speaks highly more to the creativity of the people who mock this movie than the people who actually worked on it. I have watched the videos of the comments from the different Snow White trailers set to music, and I bust a gut or near to it. So, those are my thoughts.
Novus.
Well, at this point, you probably could cast Paula White as Snow White, and the film would probably turn a profit compared to Miss Zegler. You know, you can see some of the excellent AI images and videos where they've changed the mantra with the memes, as Ambassador was talking about, where they have Gallaudet, and it's basically hashtag Go Evil Queen, and they talk about how like the evil queen is the queen that we want, and she's deserving of it. She's misunderstood, and it's like, yeah, like at this point, anybody than Rachel Zegler would be better. But I think ultimately it's too late. And we put a link in the comments on X, but basically Variety was reporting via Reddit that a projected cost for Snow White is $240 million. Well, today you have to add inflation to that number, and you also have to add there's a lot of other hidden costs that never get reported. So let's raise this to projected $350 million just for the sake of illustration. Overseas strategy isn't doing too well. Domestic strategy is failing. So it's exceedingly possible that this film would make absolutely no profit and becomes a liability of one of many. It will also tie into when we move to USAID. We have a general point for that as well. But I mean, Snow White, you have a great opportunity to do live action remakes in an age where we have the technology. But quite frankly, if you look at the live action remakes, they're not that impressive. You would think you go back to the 50s and 60s when Cecil B. DeMille was able to recreate the Red Sea in a bathtub. You would think that like they had these benchmarks back there that were incredible, and they had no technology to the degree we have now. Now we have technology, the ability to make worlds unseen, realms within realms, and we got nothing. So what could be done with this film, and really could have done something, you know, exceptionally awesome. I mean, now to quote Miss Zegler, it's weird, weird, weird. And the irony is that you have films that like Snow White and the Huntsman and the second sequel to that. Those were interesting because they did tie in a unique aspect to it. You did have a cool epic, you know, charge on the beach with the knights. You had the father, so you had this really kind of uniqueness. It was bringing it a little bit more real. I'm not going to necessarily comment on the lead actress that they had to play Snow White, because I think after playing Twilight, you're going to be typecast as shiny vampire lover forever. But that aside, the film wasn't that bad. But this film, I mean, you have a failure to launch. Like it didn't even get to the rocket launcher. That's how catastrophic this is. But in closing, when we get to USAID, there might be some arterial funding that gets to these type of films, because there's no way in a normal universe where you have to use classic free market advertisement and profit. There's no way that these type of films continue to have success, and there's no ways that studios can stay in business. But yeah, Rachel Zegler killed Snow White. Now it's a dead white, and go Evil Queen.
Sorry for any facial expressions, folks. I seem to have learned something that I may have done, and if I have done it, I am extremely sorry to whoever I did it to. But anyway, yeah. As for Rachel Zegler, well, I have already given my opinion. Moving on. Disney is being sued, folks, for discrimination, apparently. The class action lawsuit, let me share this tab. And let's bring this up. Disney hit with class action lawsuit over disability access service policies that alleges mistreatment of disabled people at theme park.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, this is kind of fucked up. This is also coming from M. Montanaro at That Park Place. Shout out to you. Walt Disney Parks and Resorts is facing a major class action lawsuit over controversial changes to the Disability Access Service, a system designed to assist guests with disabilities at Disneyland and Disney World. The lawsuit, Malone versus Disney, was filed in Orange County, California, and alleges that Disney, along with its contracted medical screening partner, Inspired Health Alliance, is engaging in discriminatory practices that violate multiple federal and state disability laws. Holy crap. So, according to the complaint, Disney's new DAS policies unlawfully restrict access to the service by limiting eligibility to guests with development disabilities such as autism. The plaintiffs argue that this revised policy discriminates against individuals with physical disabilities, violating the Americans with Disabilities Act and California's Unruh Civil Rights Act, the Health Insurance Portability Accountability Act, HIPAA, and California Confidential and Medical Information Act. Holy crap. The lawsuit further claims that Disney implemented unfair and coercive policies requiring guests to disclose private medical information in non-confidential settings, violating their privacy rights. It also challenges Disney requirements that disabled guests sign an allegedly deceptive and unenforceable class action waiver before they can even be considered as DAS accommodations for DAS accommodations. Disney introduced sweeping changes to its DAS program in 2024, citing concerns over excessive use of the service. This rather conveniently came right around the time that Disney rolled out Genie Plus, its paid Fast Pass system. Fast Pass was once included in the price for Disney Parks ticket. The policy significantly limits DAS eligibility to guests who, due to developmental disabilities like autism or similar, are unable to wait in a conventional queue for an extended period of time. Previously, DAS was available to a broader range of disabled guests, including those with mobility impairments, chronic pain conditions, and other physical disabilities that made prolonged waiting in line difficult. The lawsuit argues that this shift is not only exclusionary, but also illegal, as the ADA's Unruh Act prohibit businesses from imposing eligibility criteria that screen out or tend to screen out the individuals with a disability, unless such a criteria plaintiffs contend that Disney's restrictions of DAS to those with development or disabilities is arbitrary and not legally justifiable. Alleged privacy violations and public disclosures of medical information. The complaint also takes issue with how Disney and Inspire Health Alliance conduct DAS eligibility screenings. Plaintiffs claim that disabled guests were forced to publicly disclose sensitive medical information in front of Disney cast members and other guests, violating HIPAA and CMIA protections. Holy crap. Rather than allowing in-person DAS registration, Disney now requires Walt Disney World guests to apply through a live video chat with a cast member. Disney guests have the option to online register, but are still encouraged to use the same method. The lawsuit alleges these processes fail to protect guest privacy and continue or create unnecessary hurdles for disabled individuals. Additionally, the plaintiffs argue that IHA's role in the screening process further complicates the legal situation. As a contracted third party collecting and evaluating medical information on Disney's behalf, the company is also accused of violating state privacy laws, including the improper disclosure of handling and protecting health information, or protected health information. The lawsuit also challenges Disney's claim that the alternative accommodations, such as attraction queue reentry, rider switch, or location return time, provide equal access to guests who are denied DAS. Plaintiffs argue that these alternatives fail to adequately address the needs of many disabled guests, particularly those with physical impairments. Yikes. I mean, folks, this is very specific, by the way. For instance, attraction queue reentry, also called meetup in some sections, the lawsuit describes how this forces guests to leave a queue and return later, which plaintiffs argue creates unnecessary physical strain, logistical complications, and safety risks, especially for guests with mobility impairments. Rider switch. The complaint states that requiring disabled guests to wait outside the queue while their party rides does not adequately accommodate individuals who physically cannot endure long waits. It also limits party sizes and can isolate disabled guests from their group. Location return time. The lawsuit criticizes the option for requiring guests to request accommodations in public settings, leading to embarrassment, emotional distress, and an equitable system that still faces long waits. It also highlights that this is not offered at both Disneyland and California Adventure, creating a disparity in access. I mean, it just goes on and on here, folks. Holy crap.
Yeah, I think we get the gist.
Yeah. So Disney has basically, wow, they are. What are your thoughts?
They have. Novus, would you like to go first? Being I did last.
Most kind ambassador. So what's interesting about this orange and to this august body, alas, Our Lady has not arrived yet, but perhaps soon. What we will say is this, is that pairing what you just said, Orange, we also looked at some stuff prior to coming on. And so there's actually from 26th November 2024, because then we're going to tie in the Gina Carano thing as well, that Al Jazeera was reporting that Disney agreed to pay a $43.3 million legal lawsuit to female employees that earn essentially $150 million less than their male colleagues over 8 years. And that, you know, there's a whole bunch of labor laws and different type of things that California passed. So that happened last year. We've got Gina Carano going on right now, and Disney isn't winning these bouts just from the open source information. And then you have this. This just becomes icing on the cake. I mean, this is really something, particularly since it seems for the last 10 years that diversity, equity, inclusion, and all things, you know, liberty, fraternity, equality is like the thing that Disney is doing, selling it across the board. So it's very interesting that you have the public Disney that allows for all of these messages to be displayed very nicely, very, you know, politely. But then privately, it's kind of like with Ellen DeGeneres. You get into the dark recesses of what happens behind closed doors, and you get to the staff, and it's a completely different world. So who knows? We might continue to see in 2025, now that there's a cultural shift in what is acceptable and what is not, there might be more people. And our closing point is if Gina Carano's case continues to advance and she gets something out of it, that might be that moment in Rocky IV when Rocky gets that shot at Ivan Drago and you hear his coaching team saying he's cut. And at that point, then the movie takes over and America comes back, you know, in like awesome power for like 15 to 17 rounds. But Disney might get significantly wounded by this, because what it does is if these people can win these suits and enough word gets out, then more people are going to bring them. And it's a lot easier to settle than it is to go to court. But the court gives you notoriety, and notoriety also gets you sympathy. And Disney, I think, has probably frustrated a lot of people that want to see some sort of justice, or just as Michael Caine said to Bruce in The Dark Knight, some men just want to see the world burn, Master Bruce. Over to you, Ambassador.
Yeah, because here's the thing: the agencies that have been listed in this lawsuit are not agencies that you want to mess with on a legal level. When you start discriminating or seemingly are discriminating against people that have a mental or physical or psychological impairment, they are protected by these agencies. They are protected by these laws. And the disclosure of personal, medical, or psychological information, it's kind of a big no-no. You don't do that, particularly to a person who has no legal reason to have access to that information. Now, regardless of how big Disney thinks it is, they are. I don't want to go. I'm gonna make a statement here that's been thrown around a lot, but in this case, I think is applicable, extremely so. That Disney isn't above the law here. They're messing with things that they ought not have bothered to mess with. And if these allegations are true, which if there is a class action lawsuit behind these allegations, then I would say more likely that there is validity to them. Disney isn't more than a heap of trouble. I'll tell you later. No, we've already talked about that. I'll tell you later. Tom the Man Ambassador. Anyway, the thing is this, and Novus, you bring up a very valid point. Disney over the last 10 years or so, I would say this kind of started with the purchase of Lucasfilm, and maybe just a little bit before that. They've gone on a series of minor to major blunders, both in the public eye and I would imagine behind the scenes. If this class action suit goes forward, they're not going to have egg on their face. They're going to be in some serious legal and I would imagine financial trouble, because these class action suits, they can start getting into the big dollar range. And if Disney is operating at a deficit or operating in the red, as we have reported in the past that they in fact are, this is not good. Now, I don't want to see the people that work for Disney be put out and everything and left without a job, because I do have a heart for those people. But as for the people that run the company and who have enacted these policies, well, as we say nowadays, FAFO, you ucked around and now you're about to find out. Yeah, none of this bodes well for Disney. None of this at all.
Also, too, with the point that you made just now, the notoriety of lawyers. A lot of lawyers, when you get to this level, they'll just take the case because it increases their name brand. So they know that the client, or like the class action clients, they can't actually pay. It's not about that. It's about basically them being able to get a purchasing price from Disney in mediation, or again, this is own opinion from analysis stuff, or they get the spotlight. Like the lawyers for Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, they got spotlight, like massive influence. So there's that as well. And then again, it's like the bear with the hounds. At some point, a bear can take on probably half a dozen hounds, but once you start to increase the volume or it gets past a certain point, then it's over, man. As Bill Paxton, the late great, once said, "Game over, man. It's over."
Yep, definitely. So, yeah, when you start dealing with, as I said, when you start dealing with class action suits that involve discrimination against a person with a physical or a psychological disability, or a developmental disability, that is the type of waters you don't want to get into. So, that's my 2 cents.
It's definitely not the Magic Kingdom at that point.
No, it isn't.
Yeah. Well, Disney has always been screwing up. I mean, especially over the last few years. With this suit, it's just nothing new anymore. So, you're going to find, or I'm wondering where this will go, because they are being sued by Gina Carano. So it's just even more. This is just, when is enough going to be enough for people with Disney? I mean, seriously.
Well, if I might offer a small piece of anecdotal evidence just for just how much people are getting over, are just about over with Disney and their subsidiaries, Lucasfilm and Marvel. And we don't have to go into a big side road here, or rabbit trail here. I apparently on the Marvel X account last night, they dropped a short video. It was maybe a minute long, maybe a little over. Apparently, Anthony Mackie made an appearance at an AMC theater just before the showing of the movie he's starring in. And yeah, okay, we all have our issues with Anthony Mackie, myself included. I have no intention of going to see this movie. But here's the interesting thing. The theater that he made his appearance in wasn't even full. I would say it was maybe 20 or 30% full to what a normal AMC theater would hold. And I'm talking just a single theater, not the whole building in itself. And I didn't listen to what was said or anything else. Everybody was cheering and clapping and happy and everything. But the noticeable thing is, you would think they would want to pick a theater that was actually full, and it wasn't.
Yikes.
I would definitely. Anyway.
Yeah.
I would definitely say
Well-
people's. Go ahead.
Yeah, with that, jeez, Disney just can't seem to catch a break, nor should they. That's going to lead us to our next one, though, folks. So hold on one moment here. There we go. So with that, that is going to lead us to our next topic. Let's see here. Apparently, folks, USAID targeted gamers for or misinformation and shit. So we got this one from Bounding into Comics. Shout out to you guys over there. USAID's official disinformation primer says gaming sites are one of many alternative spaces from which problematic information more regularly originates. So yeah.
Is that a banana holding a lightsaber?
Yes, that is a banana holding a lightsaber, apparently.
That's gonna be the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Well, it was in a
Alright.
galaxy far, far away, so you know.
Yeah, I mean, they got a
Ye-
freaking rock that is a space captain or a spaceship captain. So yeah,
Don't remind me of Geo, please.
the fact that you know its name is ridiculous. But anyway, with the recent shuffle occurring around the United States Agency for International USAID or USAID, a deeper look into their work has revealed that the organization's central disinformation primer listed gaming sites as notable sources of potential disinformation. So they went after gamers and gamer sites. Gamers or gamer sites are run by gamers, folks. As covered en masse as part of the current news cycle, sorry, shortly after being sworn in for his second term on January 20th, President Donald Trump issued an executive order declaring that from this day forward, the foreign policy of the United States shall champion core American interests and always put America and American citizens first. From there, the weekend of February 1st, my birthday, saw employees from the Department of Government Efficiency and their boss, Elon Musk, who is now seemingly the sole head of a department following Vivek Ramaswamy's sudden exit, set their sights on USAID and began gutting the entirety of its operation. In the days since the development, more and more scrutiny has been placed on USAID's past work history, with many individuals taking the opportunity to scour the organization's publicly released writings in search of anything that may shed light on whether or not their funds were truly mismanaged. And it was a result of this newfound attention that the group's official disinformation primer was brought to public light, created in 2021 through a collaboration between USAID's Josh McLeader, I have no idea, and Shannon McGuire, the National Opinion Research Center, the University of Chicago's Susan Abbott, Renee Hendley, Luis Camacho. The primer serves to help USAID staff partners to understand the basics of disinformation, how it is spread, why it is spread, and how programming can help reduce its damaging impact on societies around the world. Today's digital communications and media landscape is complex, and this has given rise to a new set of challenges and considerations for democracy support. Reads one of the opening paragraphs. Across all USAID programming countries, this requires a solid understanding of disinformation and robust approaches for countering and preventing it. To this end, following a very basic recap of the different types of misdisinformation, such as claims made with false context or as overt propaganda, and their uses by local foreign agitators, the team then proceeds to provide a closer look at their methods of spread, social factors that make them work, and anticipated challenges one may encounter in trying to combat them. So essentially, folks, they are going after anything that they didn't like to hear. One such challenge presented to by the primers understanding alternative media spaces, as the document asserts that although discussions on disinformation and misinformation often revolve around assumptions of state actors driving the issue, in actuality, problematic information more regularly originates from networks of alternate sites and anonymous individuals who have created their own alt media online spaces, which include message board and digital distribution platforms. Examples given: Reddit, 4chan, Discord. Conspiracy news sites. Examples given: RT and 21st Century Wire. And perhaps most curiously, gaming sites. While information and alternative systems of the conspiracy theories may seem farcical or preposterous to an outsider, the users these spaces enable them to collaborate and validate their own claims and interpretations on the world that differ from mainstream sources, wrote the primer's authors. With this, individuals contribute their own research to a larger discussion, collectively reviewing and validating each other to create a populist expertise that justifies, shapes, and supports their alternative beliefs. As these discussions become larger, mainstream institutions may pick up on the issue because they do not understand the platform or alternative media system more generally. They may unknowingly provide wide coverage of misleading information. So basically, folks, they're saying that if you did your own research into something and you found out that something was not right or not done well, and they decided to report on it, well, yeah, that could be considered misinformation, disinformation, because they don't like the fact that it was pointed out. I mean, it goes on to explain. I will leave a link to the article in the chat for you all. But essentially, this is absolutely ridiculous. That the U.S. government basically decided to target gaming sites simply for reporting on things that they were unaware of. So, panel, thoughts?
Ambassador.
Okay. Well, I find it I find it very bemusing that the U.S. government, with the plethora of terrorist organizations that exist throughout the world, would be worried about something as innocuous as 4chan or Reddit or other gamer sites, quote unquote, that would be positing ideas that might be counter to what the official United States government train of thought would be. Although at the same time, we have to remember that just a little over a month ago, our government was being run by, well, a decrepit old fossil, or at least being made to appear that a decrepit old fossil was running our government. Well, in fact, we probably all know the fact of the matter that was by no means the case. But the fact that USAID, the funding from that, which was supposed to be originally used to help underdeveloped countries, people who were impoverished, people who needed a hand up, and so on, was being used to go after gamers. I want to say I'm surprised, but at the same time, I'm not, because this is our government that we're talking about here. When they were pouring money into things as preposterous as doing transgender experiments on rats and mice, this just does not surprise me.
Squeak, squeakity squeakers.
Squeaking. Anyway, the whole idea of the conspiracy theory, well, it's starting to become more or less conspiracy, more less theory and more actual conspiracy, which is in fact true. Now, as to the whole gamer angle of it, I want to go back a few years to a franchise that I actually very much enjoyed playing the first few outings of, that being namely Assassin's Creed. For those of you who might be familiar, I imagine most everybody here is, and the audience is as well. In Assassin's Creed 2 and 3, there were a series of puzzles and so on that unlocked what might be called rather conspiratorial in-game evidence of much broader, perhaps more substantial real-world conspiracies, namely behind Nikola Tesla and so on. But we as a species have always been digging at what we consider to not be factually true, and we have at times crafted conspiracy theories around these ideas. And at times these have been rather novel, maybe even completely unsubstantiable, but at the same time humorous. But there have been times where there has been credence to these theories. And the fact that our own government use a bureaucracy attached to itself to silence conspiracy theorists and quote unquote disinformation spreaders and so on, again, it's seemingly preposterous, but at the same time, I'm by no means surprised, or I would imagine a lot of other people wouldn't be either. Those are my thoughts.
Novus.
So, what is exceedingly interesting about United States aid for international development that started roughly in the 60s, I believe, with President Kennedy,
Yes.
is that, I'm sure if we're off by a year or so, forgive us. But what was the point of that? The point of that was it was engaging in the Cold War. We would call it soft power, non-military power. So it's engaging in soft power and influence to basically set up saying, United States, blue countries on the map, good. Soviet Union, red countries on the map, bad. Communism, bad. America, friend. America, good. Send us, support. And basically then you get those great, movies like Dr. Strangelove, where you've got like the world, divided up into like the blue countries are us, the red countries are them, and everybody else in between is fair game. So, but it also has it had a remarkable capability to deploy people for national disasters and things that you would see happening around the country with the domestic agencies, for hurricanes and whatnot. And it would get people to the disaster sites internationally within like 24 to 48 hours. It'd be coordinating interagency. That was the original vision and what it was doing. Fun fact for reference, the USAID budget is $50 billion projected from what recent open source data has come out. The U.S. Marine Corps budget for 2025 was projected to be $53 billion. So you have USAID, the same budget roughly as the U.S. Marine Corps. And you think about what the U.S. Marine Corps does with all of its planes, equipment, logistical support, and you think what USAID has been doing. That's staggering, because essentially it's another Marine Corps worth of money that now has been discovered doing a whole bunch of other things, with musicals in Ireland to other great venues of culture. So we move to this specific illustration for our conversation about gaming. Sometimes, we live in this incredible age where we could do almost anything with technology. As I said before, it's like the imagination decrepitcy of these people to even do something like this. It just boggles the mind. I mean, if they're going to get involved in the gaming industry and go after the gamers, I mean, we would think that they would make a clandestine Fortnite cell of actual gamers that are actually taking the characters in the game, or Assassin's Creed 1v1v, and trying to do covert operations within the game and expose it almost like real life. But they can't think of something creative that actually would make a funny like live show or something. It's so boring, but it's also like, but why? And they have more justification of why it happened over the next 6 to 12 months as everything gets rooted out. But it's the apple's fallen far from the tree, and it's a shame because the section of USAID that actually did really good work with disasters and people, it's like that should have been the main focus. That should have been the main focus, but it's not. To get involved in the gaming, it's like, to what end? At some point, it just becomes harassment, because the irony about gaming and about the entire entertainment industry, a lot of this stuff is just made up imagination. Like all the Marvel films, all of the fantasy films, at the end of the day, they're stories and they're fantasy, they're for entertainment. If the world networks got wiped out tomorrow and we didn't have access to the internet, there would be a catastrophe with not having the weekly Hollywood wrap up with Orange, but the world would go on without any movies like Snow White. So it's unfortunate that the money wasn't put towards real people and real things as its mission was, but I guess it's not going to be around for much further.
Now, if this current government has anything to say about it, and I say, for one, let it die.
Let the past die.
Kill it if
That's
you
the only
have to.
good-
Yeah.
That's the only good line from that movie, and I even hate to say that.
Anyway, moving on to our next one. As for me, you said USAID or whatever it's called. I'm glad they're getting it. I'm glad they're checking it out, because we need a transparent government. Anyway, our last topic before we get to the movie discussion is a simple Google search can kill all media reports about Rings of Power renewal. Now, for those of you who don't know about Rings of Power, it is a poor interpretation of Tolkien's work to the point of absolute insult. And people are saying, oh, it's officially been renewed for a third season. No, it hasn't. I mean, yes, it's having a third season, but there's no renewal. That would suggest that there was a possibility of the show's cancellation. But if you do a simple Google search, folks, like I did, is Rings of Power guaranteed 5 seasons? Look at that. Yes, according to reports and information from Amazon, Lord of the Rings, it's not called Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, it's called Rings of Power, is guaranteed to run for 5 seasons, with the company committing to a 5-season production plan when acquiring the television rights from the Tolkien estate. So, more about this, confirmed by Amazon. Multiple sources, including Hollywood Reporter, confirmed that Amazon is committed to 5-season plan of Rings of Power. Amazon reportedly invested a significant amount, around $1 billion, to secure rights for the production of the series for 5 seasons. Even if viewership fluctuates, the current understanding is that Amazon will see the series through its intended 5 seasons. Yeah.
I had to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
I mean, I get
the
it,
heresy
folks.
reeks to high heaven.
Yeah,
This is
it
beyond
shows
heresy. This is
that
blasphemy. But yes.
Well, yeah, but it shows that it's been I thought it was guaranteed for 3 seasons. That's my mistake. Because yes, I had said it on Thingamajive, but closing that down, don't need that window anymore. I thought it was 3 seasons at first, but it turns out that it's 5 contractual seasons due to 50 hours, and I believe there's 10 episodes per season. Yeah, so make them an hour long, and you got 50 hours, folks. That basically destroys what's that one? Screen Rant and all those other ones discussing film, all of them saying, oh, it's officially been renewed for a 3rd season. No, it hasn't. It's always had a 3rd season planned, and it's always had a 3rd season guaranteed, and a 4th and a 5th. No matter how badly the ratings drop, they are committed to those seasons. And they will lose money due to it.
Mm-hmm.
Time is money. Ratings is money. And they can peddle all the lies they want. It's still going to fail.
Well, on that point, on that point, Orange, just on a quick sidebar is that the irony is, and this is when you, I believe, Ambassador phrased Old Fossil when we were tagging some people in earlier comments to some of the more mainstream groups that are like counter critics, like Friday Night Tights and everything like that. And those groups is that you're going to get negative promotion. And a lot of these people that go on these massive rants and tirades were like, the great phrase is, oh, I watched it, so you don't have to. It's like, you have to watch this. Even if you're going to attack it negatively, you have to watch the show. You will get people to watch these shows. You will give them some form of ratings, because if you don't do that as a YouTuber or a Rumbler, you won't have content. And once you get into the negative cycle, you're locked like into the mob. And so they can't not talk about it. And the most effective way to end these shows would be to excommunicado John Wicket and not have anything to do with it. Give overtures over open source information to say this is why it's heresy, this is why it's incorrect, this is why you shouldn't watch it, which is pretty easy to do. But yeah, I mean, but spot on, because everybody's getting all spun up like what you said, but now it's been locked in, kind of almost in a cursed way now, because they're bound to the fate of the rings of power.
Yeah. And apparently the 3rd season is going to take place a substantial time in the future, where Sauron is getting ready to make his ring. And I'm thinking to myself, look, you already fucked up the timeline out as much as it is. You made Gandalf come in. Essentially, that character is Gandalf, that wizard character and whatnot. And the show just sucks. You got fucking orcs that are essentially vampires because they fry in the sun, apparently, which isn't true at all about orcs.
Although
Twilight
there were
orcs.
Although there are vampires in Tolkien's Legendarium, but they were different from what we know them as vampires.
Yeah. But yeah,
Sauron was a bit vampire-ish.
Yes, he was.
Yes, he did drain the life out of others. But the point of this whole thing is, folks, as bad as Lord of the Ring, or Rings of Power, not Lord of the Rings, but as bad as Rings of Power is, it is really inappropriate, and it is really unethical. Disingenuous, yeah. To basically tell people, oh, look, it's getting renewed for a 3rd season. No. Just be honest and say, Rings of Power 3rd season is coming, which is contractually stipulated by the Tolkien estate that they get 5 total seasons, no matter how bad their ratings are. Honestly, that is something that needs to be said, and that is something that needs to be clarified. That is something that needs to have a community note put on all of those damn media things on X.
Mm-hmm.
There's no official renewal. It's just been announced that it's coming. That's all. So yeah, when you are channels or pages like discussing film, and Screen Rant and all these other people that are saying, oh, it's been cleared for a third season. It was cleared for a third season when the contract was finalized and signed off on, which was years ago. So, yeah. That's the whole point of this. And I find it rather disingenuous that I am so sick of the media fucking making this or making shit up. I'm serious. It's a lot of people are like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It is a big deal. If you are going to be reporting on something, you want the information to be accurate. And if it is inaccurate at the time of your reporting, you therefore do a clarification. And you clarify, okay, this is what the new information has come out, and this is what it says. You don't fucking mislead people. Because eventually misleading people will lead to something further down the road that could have a little bit more severe consequences. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this?
Well, I had very little interest in the show to begin with, and I will say this: there was a short in one of the episodes of Robot Chicken from back in the day where they actually did a parody of what a continuation of the Lord of the Rings would have been if it had been greenlit by J.R. Tolkien Jr. And Gandalf and Merry and Pippin and Hannah Montana were flying in fire jets to a mountain of some sort, or a volcano of some sort, to fight the three-headed peanut butter and jelly monster. I find that more humorous and more entertaining than the Rings of Power itself.
You could add the flying spaghetti monster for a real climactic cinematic clash.
Yes. Yeah, the flying spaghetti monster known as Spaghettio. Anyway.
So with the Rings of Power, it's oh, sorry, I didn't know if you were done, Ambassador.
No. I'm done. Go ahead, Novus. I'm done.
So with the Rings of Power, I think the real story with this, and Orange, great point with highlighting is, bringing clarity. It's like, yeah, they're contractually locked in. Amazon has to make it. Ideally, they wanted to make 7, just like the Witcher season on Netflix, which now probably will not happen at all because it lost, I think, half its viewership from open source numbers that were reported from season 1, season 2. It might lose another half, but the big news here is that regardless if it has 3 seasons or 5 seasons, contractually obligated for 5, is that there are about 25 to 30 YouTube channels and influencers and a major academic in medieval literature, Corey Olson, who self-proclaimed his name the Tolkien professor, might also be against trademark law to do that if the Tolkien estate found out. But they're sealing their fate. And they're sealing not only hypocrisy, but anti-Tolkienness by everybody then is going to surge into season 3. And we went to the Hollywood Reporter when we were looking at the article that Orange sent and also just looking at, and it says basically with season 3, it's going to streamline about Sauron making the iconic One Ring, jumping several years to the events of season 2 to 3 at the height of the War of the Elves and making the One Ring. We go to the actual book. We're using the Fall of Numenor that was edited by Brian Selby from J.R. Tolkien and Christopher Tolkien. The War of Elves and Sauron starts in 1693. Sauron completes his One Ring in 1600 Second Age. The elves are instructed in 1500 about the rings, and they complete the 3 rings in 1590. The story is beyond repair. But the thing is that Sauron overtaking and sacking Eriador, that was the highlight. Because then the Numenorians show up in probably one of the greatest armada sequences and amphibious landings prior to them landing on the shores with Ar-Pharazôn to take out Sauron and bring him back to Numenor. So we missed it. And the fact is that we have been deprived, again, because the technology, they could have nailed it. They had all of the ability to do it. And for whatever reason, to either deconstruct Tolkien, to destroy his art, we've made reference about how this is like the Monuments Men, all the great works of art of Europe being burned by the Nazis because if they can't keep it, then they're going to destroy it. But I mean, the ring is lost. Everything is lost. Everything is gone. And no matter what happens, so that the clarity of all of the fandom that care about Tolkien should be, don't watch the show, and you can fight against it in other ways. And the fact that basically it's going to be for a third season, a fourth season, a fifth season, there should be nobody watching the show or reporting on it by the fifth one, unless you're writing articles or doing videos about why the series is completely bunk and nothing. But it's anti-Tolkien, exurge Tolkien, eternal, and if only we had a Judge Dredd moment that we could imply and implement on this, that would be pretty cool. But anyway, that's what we got.
Well, after 5 seasons, the sentence is death. So. But speaking of, I think that is a good. Or Investor, did you give your thoughts on this?
I'll say one thing further. Just read the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
Just read the Silmarillion. Read the Silmarillion.
Hear.
Read the Lost Tales. Read anything other than watching this dreadful, dreadful show that has absolutely nothing to do with Tolkien or his work. If I was going to pass sentence as a judge from the Judge Dredd universe for massacring and butchery of iconic literature, the sentence is death. Prepare to face judgment.
Yeah, and
So-
we reference it, but like everybody, the Fall of Numenor, which came out in 2022, which is later, I think it was all teed up for publication, is the last book that Christopher Tolkien worked on. And what Brian Silby did is he took like the Silmarillion reference, brilliant reference, but he took all of he put all of the tales of the Second Age for Numenor and the downfall. He put them in chronological order, so it reads like a novel. And you have Alan Lee who illustrated it. So like that, I mean, if you wanted to make a 7-season show, you could have just used this book. But it's the last book that Christopher Tolkien did before he passed. But and it nails it. You can read it. So go read The Fall of Numenor and the Silmarillion specifically if you want to actually know like what it is. And you'll never watch the show after that ever.
Yeah.
I need to get a copy of
So
that
with-
book, but moving on.
Yeah, with that, we are going to be beginning our discussion of this lovely gem of the 90s, which is the 1995 Judge Dredd movie, which was we discussed the remake last week. And I gotta say, I do like this overlay here, because that building is shaped like a fucking bird.
Not just a bird, an eagle.
Yeah. The eagle
Wings of Justice.
of the Hall of Justice. Yeah, the Wings of Justice and whatnot. So yeah, this movie, folks, is a lot different than the one that we see or that Carl Urban played in. This was the more comic version, in which it was a lot more out there. Judge Dredd has earned his name by this point in this movie. He's known as a legendary judge and whatnot. And Sylvester Stallone does a good job playing the character. The problem is most of this movie is spent with Judge Dredd's helmet off. And I think that is the biggest complaint that most of the people have for this. So with that out of the way, let's hear some of the thoughts from the panelists. What are your guys' thoughts on this movie? Before I give mine.
Novus, would you like to go first?
Sure. I think one of the things that you just said with the helmet is Judge Dredd's character from a comic. First off, it's got Sylvester Stallone. It's got classic 80ness. Specifically, we have a good film rating for this. But regarding the helmet, what's the big thing with Star Wars? You have Darth Vader masked for the whole movie except for the very, very last sequence. And we went back and we watched, the film, and it's kind of like the making of. The director really loved the comics. He really wanted to bring this out, but you know that you're going to have Sylvester Stallone. I mean, all of the trailers, is going to push his star power. But you could have had it where basically, and in the film, you get to parts in the film, because he has the part where he's taken captive and prison. So you get parts in the way that they wrote the story where eventually you have to take the helmet off. But to have the helmet on as long as possible, because one line is like after Judge Dredd took the helmet off, it just became Sylvester Stallone doing an action sequence film, which I think is pretty accurate because you could hear his voice and you knew like from his jawline when he's wearing it. So you've got the mystery. You're pretty certain it's like we're all pretty certain that Darth Sidious was Emperor Palpatine in the first film, with the senator. But you could have been somebody else, but we don't know. So Judge Dredd, yeah, should have kept the helmet on as long as possible because that is the iconic sequence of all the images. And you don't need to know his face. You know that he's a judge, the judge, jury, and the executioner with the power to dispense justice and the power to take or give life with mercy or the hammer. So could have left the helmet on, but I mean, hey, it's a couple decades old. It's a classic cult film. Yeah. Oh well.
Ambassador.
Well, as for me, this, me and Mother Ambassador, we went to see this when it came out because we've always been fans of Stallone. I knew very little about the property. I went mainly because of, it was Stallone. Everybody liked Sylvester Stallone. Even to this day, everybody still watches his stuff. I would say one of his more recent projects, Tulsa King. I've seen clips of it, but I haven't been able to watch a whole episode all the way through. But I think.
But have you seen Tiger King?
No, and I really don't want to. Anyway.
Wow.
Anyway, we meant mainly because we like Stallone. The property itself, like I said, I wasn't super familiar with Judge Dredd. I was aware of the comic book and so on, but I didn't read it. It wasn't one that I was really in my crosshairs as a comic book reader at the time. But it had a good dose of humor. It had a good cast. I mean, you've got Jurgen Prochnow. For those of you who know him from the original David Lynch Dune as Duke Leto Atreides. You've got Max von Sydow, the late great Max von Sydow. You've got Diane Lane. You of course have Rob Schneider. You have Armand Assante.
Oh yeah.
This is only one of two movies that I am aware of him being in, to be honest with you, except for a reference to his name in the first Santa Claus with Tim Allen. This and maybe 1492 Conquest of Paradise, which I've never seen, but I've watched the History Buff review of, and I'm aware that he is in that.
Wow, you're going deep, man.
I know. Anyway, I enjoyed this movie. Me and Mother Ambassador both enjoyed this movie. It's a good, solid action movie. Of course, you have to make reference to one of the great voice actors of our generation, that, of course, being the late James Earl Jones, who does the opening narration, the opening monologue with the scroll about the future. And you can't go wrong with James Earl Jones doing your voiceover for a movie. That gives you instantaneous credibility. I don't care.
Even with Waterworld.
Yes, even with Waterworld. James Earl Jones just doing narration for Judge Dredd and Waterworld.
Saves the film.
That makes it does to a degree. It does. But what this movie actually does, it does posit an interesting idea. Which is more important? Loyalty to family or loyalty to the law? Because here's the interesting thing, and I think this is actually a rather clever thing for them to have done. They created a breed, quote unquote, of super judges, that being Judge Joseph Dredd and his brother, whose name eludes me at the moment.
Rico.
Judge Rico. Thank you. And I think that particular aspect of the movie was rather interesting because Rico, in a way, isn't wrong. because yeah, he's maniacal, he is crazy, but in a way, some of his legal philosophy is not inaccurate. The innocent only exists to eventually become perpetrators. Yes, it is a rather dark and bleak philosophy.
This is cynical.
Cynical, yes, but there isn't necessarily it's not untrue, because if you want to parallel this with, say, Batman Begins, and when Ra's al Ghul is talking to Bruce, and he asks him, "How'd you feel the first time you broke stole?" He's like, "The ideas of morality kind of disappear when you're staring down the idea of starving to death and you steal to eat."
Yeah, you lose many assumptions.
Yeah, you lose a lot of assumptions. Now, the idea of a singular person being judge, jury, and executioner might be interesting on paper or even in the pages of a comic book. But would it work in a real world setting?
Not in this one.
At least
It's
not
fascistic.
in. It is extremely
It's actual
fascistic.
fascist. It's actual fascism.
Yes, it is. And
with nuclear wastelands and mutants.
Yes. Yeah. Well, here's the other interesting thing. This movie, though it does have a good bit of comedy, and I think it's actually some fairly well written comedy and well acted. I mean, Rob Schneider, I think a lot of people give him a lot of grief, but I think he's actually a pretty decent comedian, comedic actor. Comedic actor, maybe not so much.
Oh, I loved him in this movie.
I did too. Yeah, I absolutely. I enjoyed him. I enjoyed him thoroughly in this movie. But
Rob Schneider gets no respect at all. That's just too bad.
Yes, this is true.
Yeah, he's like the Rodney Dangerfield of this generation.
In a manner of speaking, yes, yeah. You Orange, you'd be right. You're not off track there. But here's the other interesting thing. Just a few years after Judge Dredd would come out, we would get another sci-fi, I would call definitely a cult classic, in Starship Troopers, which, if you've ever read the original novel, you realize that society is actually rather fascistic itself, or semi-fascistic.
Looking at the movie, I could tell you that.
Yeah, and the movie and everything.
Between a citizen and a civilian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, precisely.
And whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah. But in two movies, we get a example to varying degrees of what a fascistic society would look like. Now, are we saying that fascism is necessarily good? Absolutely not. But to have it be the backdrop for a science fiction story, whether it be Judge Dredd or Starship Troopers, I would say it's actually a pretty good backdrop for a science fiction story, or maybe even a fantasy story if you wanted to go to those lengths. But to get off of the deep discussion of Judge Dredd, my thoughts: I love this movie. I will always love this movie, and I hope that someday, whether it's Carl Urban or somebody else, we get another Judge Dredd movie, because I think we need one. Because this is a character that is, to varying degrees, rather fascinating. This is a man who has dedicated his life to the upholding of the law, though the methods that he uses we would maybe to varying degrees find abhorrent, to varying degrees are rather effective.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents for the moment. So, gentlemen.
Novus, give your initial thoughts.
So, you get a chance to look back at the film now, and fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with this film. I mean, I think you're always going to have critics, and we'll refer all critics to The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, because critics don't actually create anything, they just thrash. It's different than actually being a judge, since we're with Judge Dredd. Like, if you're an actual fan and you have qualifications by no other than waiting in line for days to go get a Star Wars ticket, or a movie of your choice or a book, and you actually read it and consume it, and you love it. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with here. And the other thing too is what people don't appreciate is like Jodorowsky's Dune that brought out basically the whole science fiction universe in the 80s, even though it didn't get made, but Dune shaped everything. Films like Judge Dredd, they have a genre, particularly like a post-apocalyptic, grim dark, it's kind of Warhammer 40K in a way,
Yes.
because with it's like all of the non-Space Marine people in Warhammer 40K, like with the guards and the people that have to work to turn the engines and the entire war machine for the God Emperor of mankind. So you've got this post-apocalyptic world. Really, I mean, if you look at all the films that come after it, it kind of lays the groundwork. I mean, the mega cities. You can get into the lore of Judge Dredd with the comics and with additional reading. And yeah, it's a grim, dark world. It's been nukes. And what's cool about the actual film universe is that you've got mega cities. I think Mega 1 was New York, but basically they have mega, insert number, and they range from the eastern seaboard to the western seaboard of the United States to Tokyo, South Africa, and basically the world's a wasteland. That's why when you have the late Max von Schnaun, who is also the king in the original Conan film and a phenomenal actor, he says, okay, I'm not going to have Judge Dredd be put to death, which is the sentence. I will ask for commutation and exile for him to prison camp, and I will leave the city. And then basically you see this huge deal of why everyone's saluting him, because he's making a supreme sacrifice to basically do all he can within the framework of the law. And then you're like, oh snap, there's nothing out there except for Dennis Cooper's ragtag band of animal loving, flesh eating. I mean, we'll get to that later. But Rob Schneider, he's a believer, and that's what I mean. Like he makes some great comedy with it. So Judge Dredd, it's an enjoyable fun. It's fun, and I think Rob Schneider, since we were talking about it, it's I mean, he does his job. I mean, it's hard to be bringing comedy in a film like that. It could be very dark, but it's like just bring a little joke every now and then, and it's hard to pull it off. So, but I mean, fundamentally, I don't think there's anything wrong with this film. It's fun to watch, and compared to what they're doing now, it's like, give us more Judge Dredd. Like, just make the movies with the same level of tech, because you've got Total Recall, you got Demolition Man, you got Judge Dredd, you have this mid 80s to mid 90s sequence of films that come out that now they're phenomenal. Particularly if you have a good drink and company to watch them with, they're even better.
Yes. Hey, you named two of my favorites: Demolition Man, Total Recall.
Yeah. So my initial thoughts on this film, it does its job for telling a decent story and whatnot. A story about a cop who basically gets railroaded, framed, and has to prove his innocence, and goes to war with the very system that he swore to uphold. Finding out a tragic revelation that kind of floors him, but he picks himself up real quick to essentially carry out his mission. So yeah, I thought that it was very good. It did a very good job with that. But delving deeper into it, touching on the fascistic nature of the government and whatnot, it's as the beginning of which James Earl Jones spoke of. Law as we know it had collapsed, and from the decay rose a new order. This is basically what happens if society devolves where the normal system is broken and cannot work and is not working and whatnot, where crime and chaos basically ensued to such a degree that law could not keep up. And well, this situation of this movie, the judges are unable to keep up with it, even with their new powers of judge, jury, and executioner all in one. Because as the other one said, you can only basically respond to 2% of crime in the entire city.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, how you gonna figure that shit out? Now, getting back to the lesser deep dive, let's go into the deep dive of the movie itself, where you get some of the best fucking lines. Mr. I am the law can't. I love that. I mean, Rob Schneider's fucking hilarious in this movie. Diane Lane also did a good job in this movie.
Yeah, she
where,
did.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like where she
A
actually
forbidden
is a good
love
foil
interest.
yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
I think she was a good foil for Dredd because she's like, didn't you ever, or don't you ever, haven't you ever had a friend? Yes, once. What happened? And then he tries walking away. She stops him. She's like, I want to know what happened. And then he turns around with the most wounded look on his face and says, I judged him. And, well,
Yeah, it's powerful.
most of us, yeah, it's a very powerful look, especially with her reaction to it. She's like, she has nothing to say to it. And people wonder, what the fuck, man? It's like, dude, you judged your best fucking friend. What the hell could he have done, you know? And then you also learn later on that the villain is the very person that he judged. And it comes down to it. He's like, why did you judge me? You killed innocent people. The means to an end. You caused or started a massacre. I caused a revolution. You betrayed the law. And then he's like, law. I betrayed this. Your council's experiment, which failed in you. And he's trying to basically convince Dredd, but Dredd is steadfast. He is absolute in his convictions, where Rico is absolute in his. You're not going, or he's not going to be able to sway Dredd, and Dredd's not going to be able to sway Rico. Rico was genetically mutated during the process of the cloning that turned him into the perfect criminal. So that was the main problem with him. He betrayed the law and started killing people or killing innocent people. And it's like, well, they inevitably become perpetrators, man. Yeah, but you decided not to wait for that to happen. You decided to just start killing indiscriminately. And it was an interesting foil because it's like, what happens when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force, or vice versa? That's basically, I mean, as much as Batman and Joker and Dark Knight, this is also very much Rico and Dredd, because he's like, the best thing you can do right now is kill me. Why? Because it's your only chance, brother. And he's gonna tries going for broke one last time. He tries breaking down Dredd's Dredd in a way that would actually not work, because he's gonna try to kill Hershey, Diane Lane's character, with the ABC robot that was fucking awesome. That robot, I absolutely love it.
That's pretty clutch.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Can we
like,
say clutch?
I want one.
Can we say clutch?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. I want one. I really do.
You know
mean,
what piece of tech? You know what piece of tech I want from that movie? The gun.
Oh, the Lawgiver?
The Lawgiver.
Or actually, no, the Lawgiver 2 is what they had. But yeah, the Lawgiver 2, which is the sidearm, yeah. The Lawgiver,
Diane.
we see the Lawgiver, we see the Lawgiver 1 in the first one, or in the remake.
Diane Lane is Judge Hershey, who's that rookie assistant that pairs so well. Particularly when he got that sequence when he's going through all the different weapon systems. He's like, yours, when, and if you can graduate. And then he tries to like show the basically like their hover fighter craft. He says, yours if you can get it to work. And I was like,
Yeah. I'll take the gun.
Body armor,
Screw
yours. Yeah, but it's like, body armor, yours when you graduate. Lawgiver 2, yours if you graduate. Lawmaster, yours if you can get it to work.
Yeah.
Yet he had one that did work for a while.
Yeah. And I absolutely love, it's like, you guys are using the faulty one to escape from the halls of justice. Yeah. Well, actually, Chief Justice Griffin, the corrupt Chief Justice after Chief Justice Fargo
Yeah.
retires. Played excellently by Max von Sydow. But yeah, this movie, or Chief Justice Griffin, played by Jurgen I can't remember his
Jurgen
last name.
Prochnow. Jurgen Prochnow.
Yeah,
Say it with me.
Prochnow.
Prochnow.
There you go. But yeah, he's like, well, Project Janus is a solution. This council tried to blame God once before. Yeah. Using current technology, what could we do with it? And they have the most liberal fucking discussion. Yes, I'm getting a little bit political here, folks. You get the most liberal fucking discussion with the morality of cloning. And it's like, here's the thing. These clones, sure, they'll have some form of sentience. But yeah, at least you'll have a level of control, you know? But it's like, what's not for this council to play God? We're losing this war with the city. We need people we need actual fucking people who can do what needs to be done, you know? And so, yeah.
You need to execute Order 66 on the city. Make it so.
Essentially, yeah. Well, yeah. But I love that. And he's like, God damn it. When they finally get in there, I love how Armand Asante plays the role of Rico, because when they start, or when Dredd starts unloading on the ABC gun or the ABC bot, he just opens up the door and he's like, drop the gun. Okay, so he's not going to drop it. Robot, when I count to 3, break her neck. 1, 2, and he goes quick with that, or with the counting. That is, or he plays that role so freaking well.
Yep.
Armand Asante. He plays that role just freaking brilliantly, because he goes from insane to brilliantly smart to insane to brilliantly smart. This dude uses it perfectly, you know? I mean, what is the meaning of life? Unhooks his gun, it ends, and then blows a hole right through the dude's neck, so he can't use so his voice pattern isn't recognized, so he can then break out. And it's like, okay, well, that works too. Dude just freaking was able to bust out of Aspen Penal Colony. And I love
You also have
help.
you have Armand Asante. His performance, I don't think he goes over the top with it, but he pushes it where it could become cliche if he pushed it a little bit farther. But the way that he treats this character, where it's like he has like so much intensity, particularly at the end when you get the judge and the whole thing with the clones, as the judge realizes like you're going to corrupt all the judges and make them basically essentially the crime syndicate judges. They'll invert the entire order. Sorry if you haven't seen the film, you know, it's 1980s, you should have seen it by now, or 1990s, you should have seen it by
90s,
now. But basically he's gonna 95. It actually turned a profit with a worldwide box office gross of 113 million from an 85 to 90 million dollar budget. But that aside, he's going to create like the anti-judges and the crime syndicate inverting of the order, which is basically going to be the strong survive. It's a lot like Frank Lagella's character in Masters of the Universe with Skeletor, where he pushes him so over the top. Anymore would just be cliche, but he stopped short of doing that, and he nails it. And like Armand Asante's character, like I mean, he is a very excellently portrayed villain. Where I mean, he could sell you on it, because you struggle. Like if you're watching the film, I think you probably, but like he has a good point that the city's so bad, it's so rotten. Ra's al Ghul is whispering in your ear, like, just wipe it out, start over again. You know, because the order is neutral for morality. Order just means things run smoothly. whether you have a conscience with that order, which now we go back to Dredd, that is the question. Do you just do it systematically, indiscriminately, without any semblance of morality, just like it has to be order? That's what our mission is. If you get out of line, you're guilty, as opposed to, no, there are values and there are morals and the ethics of what we're trying to create with this order. So
one of my favorite lines in the damn movie, which is so freaking great. It's like, you know what? I want you to apologize. The law can't apologize. He's like, that's just it. You're not the law anymore. So apologize. I think I deserve that. And they're standing outside of the freaking incinerator vents. He's like, I never apologized. And so he's about to apologize, but the fucking burst comes out. But I love the look on Sylvester Stallone's face when he says the law can't apologize. And then his face goes so stoically conviction rigid? So stoically rigid. It's like, the law can't apologize. And then he's just like, I'm like, wow.
I have to say, one of my favorite exchanges between Dredd and Rob Schneider's character, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, is when they're being transferred to Aspen Penal Colony just before they get shot down. And he's like, the law doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
Then why are you here now?
Well, then how do you explain what happened to you?
Yeah.
You can't.
Well, technically speaking, the law didn't make a mistake. Trump. Dredd was real. That is what you call a intentional Freudian slip.
Rob Schneider was Fergie. His character's name was Fergie.
Yeah, Fergie.
Fergie. Okay. Thank you. Not the skanky singer, the funny character. Yes, I said Fargo. I don't care. No, I'm Fergie from Black Eyed Peas, the skanky chick. Yeah. Hey, I said it. I don't care.
Hey, I got a feeling tonight's going to be a good night.
Yeah. Anyway, Fergie says to Dredd, why are you here? And Dredd doesn't have an answer, but the problem is Dredd is not at fault. He was railroaded by the same system that he swore to uphold. But then you have one judge who breaks out a radical, you have a radical chief judge who breaks out a radical minor judge and causes this whole chain of events to start. Jürgen Prochnow character, Chief, for heaven's sakes. Anyway, his character is like, we need to restart Project Janus. And everybody's like, are you nuts? We got Dredd. He's good, but the other guy was nuts. And we think it probably came from you. Wouldn't surprise me if it did.
No, it came from the original, or Dredd and Rico came from the first Chief Justice. Fargo.
Chief Justice Fargo, and Jürgen Prochnow is Judge Griffin in the film.
Judge Griffin. Yeah. Well, remember, Project Janus, all of the judges, all the chief justices, or chief judges, donated DNA. So I think it was a makeup of all of them, not just Griffin and Fargo.
He explains it in the movie, though. He's like,
okay, fair enough.
A template was chosen, or DNA was chosen, and it was mine. And we decided to play God, essentially.
Yeah.
So he explained that he was the progenitor.
Okay, fair enough. So the question is, with Rico, was it a question of nature versus nurture? Or was there something faulty in when he was made up and everything in the genetics program, whereas Dredd came out properly? That's the real question.
Which is answered. Genetically mutated to be the perfect criminal.
Fair enough. It's been a while since I've seen this. Some details slip my mind. So,
I haven't seen this movie for 20 years or for over 25 years.
And here we're all
By the
talking
way,
about
folks.
also just pure memory.
That's why
Yeah.
it's so legacy awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, last time I saw this movie, 1996, 97.
I think I say it within the last 5 years, but that's 5 years ago.
So that's
Which
like
goes back to-
27 years, 28 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry.
Which
Go
goes
ahead.
which goes back to my point that I made when we were discussing Snow White. That movie will be forgotten. Movies like Judge Dredd and the others that we discuss, they're timeless.
Yeah.
Just like the original Snow White is timeless. You can't improve. In a lot of ways, you cannot improve upon perfection. To try and do so would invite a cavalcade of error. And obviously, there has been more than a cavalcade of errors with the remake of Snow White. Whereas with the true versions of Judge Dredd that we have gotten with Stallone and Carl Urban, they weren't trying to perfect it or remake it. They were just telling a different iteration of the character. That's not a bad thing. These movies, so that's a side point for another time.
You know, another great point to what you said, Ambassador, is, you know, today, every time you have a first film in a, you know, supposed franchise, everybody tries to create like the origin story and explain everything.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing full well that's like, you don't have to explain everything. You've got a whole fan base. Judge Dredd didn't try to do that. They created the realms of the world. They gave you the boundaries. You kind of figured it out with the narration of James Earl Jones that this is not a good place. There's a whole lot of stuff that went wrong, but you just jump right into the sequence and you jump into the judges engaged in the action and engaged in trying to keep order. And you go from there, and you don't need this massive, like, oh, who is Judge Dredd? How did he get here? Like, I don't care. Let's focus on the now. So it does that very well. And that's part of the reason why I think, you know, it's just fun. And today, most films kind of almost treat the audience as super like, oh, you need to be taught and explained why, you know, Snow White is who she is. Is like, I don't know. Like, why don't you just start off with the story?
Yeah.
That's true. Well, you know, here's another thing. You can make the argument, though I will defend these movies very arduously. You could almost make the argument that the Star Wars prequels did not need to be made, but now that we have them, can you imagine a world in which those movies don't exist, much less the ancillary materials that have been created off of that? You know, the Clone Wars cartoons, both the Jay Tarkovsky and the the more fully fleshed CGI versions of the Clone Wars. You have a whole wealth of ancillary stories within the Clone Wars universe that we have, if the prequels had ever been done, we would have never gotten those stories. Also, you could make the argument that we didn't need to know how Anakin Skywalker fell, but now, 20 years on, we love these stories. And to bring it back to the point that we're discussing here, did you need an origin story for Judge Dredd? And manner speaking, we got one. Rather truncated, but it was appropriate. It worked. It flowed in the narrative of the movie that was made, and it actually fleshed out the story and the character as well, and it didn't bog it down. And of course, you have Moxo and Saito telling the tale.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong.
So, out of 10, what would you guys rate this movie?
I'll go ahead and give mine. I would give this a 7.5 or 8 out of 10. There is some issues with, I would say there are some parts of the comedy that are maybe a little bit too much and kind of is a detriment to the story. But overall, the story in itself, the narrative is solid. The acting is good. The comedy at various points is rather on point, and I did enjoy it. I think one of my favorite comedic bits doesn't involve Rob Schneider's character Fergie. It actually involves a sequence between a recidivist violator of the law, and Dredd blows up his car, and he's like, "Happy motoring." I love that sequence. I absolutely love that sequence. I cannot lie. So, but yeah, that's my score, 7.5 or 8 out of 10.
Novus.
We're giving this a solid 8.69er. Yes, we said 9er of 10. Mainly
Nice.
because the 80s and the 90s decade brought some great films. This is essentially a trailblazer film from a genre because it took a character in the comics. It's not well known. Judge Dredd is not well known. And about 10 to 12 years ago, we specifically started looking for comics like Image and a number of other ones that weren't from DC and Marvel. And you read about, some really great stories. So, Judge Dredd is not well known. I mean, it's a niche group, regardless of who owned it. And Sylvester Stallone, of the quintessential 80s and 90s action man, that's what got people in the seats. And what's also really great about the film is when he has the helmet on, he looks like Judge Dredd. If you look at the comics, and it's got that chiseled jaw it's grim. It's kind of like with Hugo Weaving in V for Vendetta. Like, you never see Hugo Weaving's face. You hear the brilliant language, but you can see the emotions in his mask, even though it's the Guy Fawkes mask smiling. So when he's in pain, you can see it and you can feel it all the way, particularly when he gives that great opening sequence of the multiple V's. But Judge Dredd, it's got a good 3-part act. It's got the opening, it's got the closing, it's got protagonists, it's got the good versus the evil. Judge Dredd does go on a character developing story because he's very rigid, like, no, the law is black and white. And then he learns, like, oh, there can be people that are judges that have ulterior motives and agendas. And then what happens? Is the system completely bad? No, but it's been corrupted. Now we need to refine and purify it. Kind of like with USAID. But, the world needs judges. It needs Judge Dredd. Mega One needs Judge Dredd. Because there are mutants and there are nuclear weapons there, and he protects us at all. But that depends, and it's fun. And our closing comment with the comedy is a sequence that Rob Schneider does very well, and it's funny because it's building this one, and we haven't really talked about it, but they crash land, as they're going to the penal colony, and Dennis Cooper comes out and he's like, a bountiful harvest. And you're like, oh, snap. And then you realize that, as he says, he goes, are you a believer? And then Rob Schneider's like, I'm a believer. And he's like making fun of Judge Dredd, like, I'm out. And he's like, well, what are they?
That wasn't
they're
Cooper.
Cannibals. It's like, snap.
That wasn't Dennis Hopper.
Oh, who was it?
That wasn't Dennis Hopper. That was James Caan.
Oh, James Caan. Yeah. So, but you've got that sequence, and it's hilarious. It's hilarious, and then more stuff gets blown up, and the bad guys, and it all works out. But 8.69er out of 10. I mean, it's got some love, definitely.
I will add one addendum: the character of Link, the cybernetic mutant.
Mean.
I knew you would say
Link.
Mean. Not Link.
Yeah.
Mean. His name was Mean. Link was Link was the.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, my bad. Okay.
Link.
Well, either way, the cybernetic mutant.
Yeah, Link
Pulled
Junior.
straight from-
No, that was Junior. Link was the one that said, "Bite me." Yeah, he was the one.
Yeah. Anyway, I knew you would say that.
Yeah. Nice Dredd line. As for me, objectively, this movie is about 7.5 to an 8. There are problems. There is a clear I mean, CGI has not aged very well in that movie. You got good practical effects, though. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
However,
Definitely.
there are some glaring problems with CGI. Subjectively, I thoroughly enjoy this movie. It is definitely an 8 to 9 out of 10. Moviegoer, it's a 10 out of 10. That movie is such a thrill ride.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So, what are we going to discuss next week?
Well, we already discussed what we're going to discuss next week. We're going to be going to the old West Tombstone.
Oh,
Remember?
right. Yeah, Tombstone.
Wow.
Yep. So,
Huckleberries
I'm your
on parade.
Huckleberry. Yeah.
I'm your Huckleberry.
So with that, folks,
just not good.
thank you for tuning in. Yeah, thank you for tuning in. If there are, let's see here. Oh, right. Tuesday. Let me show you guys what I got. Now, originally, this was my Assassin's Creed thumbnail, but it will change to this because I realized that Connor Kenway is actually part of the Life of Desmond Miles. So with that, yeah, I will be discussing on Tuesday the Life of Desmond Miles and the Assassin's Creed games. I got my overlays already loaded up. You actually saw one earlier if you were in the chat. This one here. Hey kids, want to see a dead body? But yeah. So with that, also Wednesday night, 8 p.m. will be on Jade Shadow's channel. We're talking John Wick, the first one. And then we're going to be talking this movie on Thursday night, The Punisher. We discussed it here on the weekly
Last week.
recap. Yep. Or no, that was 2 weeks ago.
No, it's week before last.
Yeah. But yeah, so me and my friend Mara are going to be discussing it this Thursday. And then next Thursday, we'll be discussing Law Abiding Citizen with, oh, damn it, what's his name? Gerard Butler and Jamie Foxx. So yeah. Anyway, folks, make sure that you sub to Ambassador and Novus and also follow them on X. And we are going to be getting out of here. So you all have a wonderful night and always remember to stay humble. Peace.
Are you done? Are you done?